Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some incredibly fascinating research out of the National University of La Plata and the Scientific Research Commission of Buenos Aires Province. We're going to see how Argentina is taking a massive, countrywide logistical disadvantage and completely flipping it into an engine for local economic growth. It's basically a masterclass in how smart design, localized marketing, and grassroots entrepreneurship can completely revitalize a small community.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the high cost of distance, opportunity in local production, the state's support ecosystem, design, marketing and entrepreneurs, and finally, achieving human-scale development. Let's jump right in.
All right, part one, the high cost of distance. Think of geography as a literal tax.
Imagine you're living in a small, remote community, miles and miles away from the big metropolitan hub of Buenos Aires. You go to the store to buy something super basic, right? Like a simple melamine table or a chair. But you end up paying literally 100% more than someone living in the city. Why on earth does geography act like this massive penalty, this massive tax, on everyday consumers in these smaller towns?
Well, the root of the problem is kind of staggering. Get this, in Argentina, over 95% of the country's cargo is moved by road. 95%. And throughout a decade of economic expansion, transportation costs absolutely skyrocketed. Workers in the trucking sector actually saw their real wages shoot up by 122%, which, hey, is fantastic for those workers, but it means moving goods from Greater Buenos Aires out to distant towns costs an absolute fortune. And those crazy freight costs, they just get passed right on to the consumer, inflating the price of literally everything you buy.
To really grasp how we got here, we've got to take a quick look back. After the military regime ended, the 1990s brought these aggressive market reforms. They opened up the domestic market, privatized industries, the whole shebang. But it created some incredibly deep vulnerabilities that essentially exploded during the severe economic and political crisis in 2001. Out of that chaos, though, came a major pivot. Over the next decade, the government deliberately moved away from old-school top-down welfare. Instead, they shifted heavily toward local, socio-productive policies, basically empowering local communities from the ground up.
Which brings us to Section 2, Opportunity in the Local Production. Time to flip the script.
So here's where it gets really interesting. This huge logistical nightmare actually creates what researchers call a protective bubble. Think about it. If a factory-made table from the city is suddenly twice as expensive just because it sat on a truck for 12 hours, local manufacturing becomes incredibly competitive all over again. It's this surprising, perfect window of opportunity to produce low-complexity stuff right at home. We're talking furniture, food products, cleaning supplies. You can make them locally and completely undercut those imported prices. It's a huge silver lining to a macroeconomic problem.
Moving on to part 3, the state support ecosystem, building the foundation.
Because, let's be real, you can't just expect these local industries to magically pop up out of nowhere. The government had to step in and organize the territory. So they built this incredible scale of support. We're talking 87 local development agencies, which are these great mixed public-private groups, plus 15 project incubators giving folks physical space, legal advice, and mentoring. And on top of that, 6 technological poles set up right next to universities to act as a bridge between high-level academic research and the local folks actually making things.
By spreading these 87 agencies all across the massive Buenos Aires province, they basically ensured almost every single municipality had someone to turn to for support. The state is acting as a catalyst here. They're syncing up big public strategic plans with the actual everyday on-the-ground reality of a small-town entrepreneur.
And they actually went a step further. They carved the province up into 8 distinct subspaces. Why do this? Because, obviously, the resources and needs you have out on the coast are completely different from what you've got up in the northwest. Mapping the territory out like this lets the state tailor its strategies to very specific local supply chains. Whether we're talking textiles, dairy, metallurgy, or petrochemicals, the support actually fits the local reality. Okay, Section 4, Design, Marketing, and Entrepreneurs, the Action Toolkit. Let's look at how locals actually use this. The first major tool in the kit is the industrial designer. But in this context, they're not just making things look pretty. They're literally agents of change. They look around, see exactly what materials and human skills are sitting right there in the town, and they optimize. They figure out how to reduce packaging, or they design clever self-assembly goods that local carpenters can easily knock out. It's all about adapting technical know-how to fit the immediate shifting needs of the community.
Tool number 2 is the marketing dimension. And no, we are not talking about flashy billboards here. These are economic and management pros who dig deep into local value chains. They want to find exactly where money is bleeding out of the town, like those crazy transport costs we talked about earlier. Once they spot the leak, they create highly specific plans to boost local identity and really drive consumer loyalty toward buy local behaviors.
Then you have the third piece of the puzzle, the entrepreneurs. They're the fuel for this whole engine. The research actually highlights two distinct profiles here. First, the social entrepreneur. This is your charismatic leader, the person with deep community trust who gets everyone fired up about local development. And then you have the business entrepreneur. That's the person who looks at the numbers, mobilizes the actual resources, and takes on the financial risk to get the venture off the ground. You absolutely need both of them to make this work. So what happens when you smash design and marketing together in the real world? Let's take a closer look at how this plays out daily across three highly viable industries: furniture, food, and chemicals.
When you break it down, the impacts are immediate and practical. Take furniture. A local carpenter uses smart, optimized design to make modular, self-assembling melamine furniture. Boom, you've just entirely bypassed the transport cost, even if, you still have to decipher the assembly instructions yourself. In the food sector, designers are creating tools for small-scale production, allowing the town to make its own goods while marketing hypes up the local, high-quality origin. And in chemicals, they literally design custom dispensers so a town can bottle and sell its own bleach or detergent at rock-bottom prices. The well stays exactly where it belongs, right inside the community.
Which leads us to our final section, Part 5, Achieving Human-Scale Development, the ultimate goal of all of this.
All of these policies, the incubators, the clever design hacks, they are all aimed at a very specific sweet spot. Researchers found that these local initiatives absolutely thrive in towns with populations between 5,000 and 30,000 people. That size is perfect. It's big enough to actually sustain a healthy amount of domestic consumption, but it's small enough that the community can still work together cohesively to make things happen.
And this ties perfectly into a really beautiful economic philosophy called human-scale development. It's a total shift away from traditional macroeconomics that honestly tends to treat people like mere objects or numbers on a spreadsheet. Human-scale development is completely centered on satisfying basic human needs and building real self-reliance. It transforms the person from being just a passive object in the economy into an active, empowered subject who is actually shaping their own local reality.
As Max Neef and his colleagues, the researchers who basically pioneered this concept, put it, there is no possibility of prominence in giant systems hierarchically organized from top to bottom. It makes sense, right? When systems get too massive, human beings just get lost in the shuffle. What we see in the Argentina explainer proves that sometimes the absolute best, most resilient, and most human economic solutions are the ones right in your own backyard.
So I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. Take a look around your own town or city. What kind of geographic or economic hurdles are you dealing with right now? And more importantly, how could a hyper-local, design-driven approach flip your community's biggest disadvantage into its absolute greatest strength? Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and hey, keep looking for those hidden local opportunities.